The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Hello, I'm Carl Seidel, host of The People's View, sponsored by the Nashua City Republican Committee. And if you want, we meet at the Crown Plaza the second Thursday of every month. And if you want to find out more information, you can go to our website at nashuagop.org.
Welcome to The People's View.
Hello, and help me welcome our guest, David Wheeler, currently the Executive Counselor for the District 5, is it?
Yes.
And Dave,
Yep.
you've been doing this for a while. How long have you been on?
This is our fourth term.
Fourth term.
We'll be completing 8 years on the council.
So you have good experience and back you.
Yes, yeah, it's been intermittent, and we've enjoyed it greatly and learned a lot.
Well, a number of people who listen into the program maybe aren't as familiar with the Executive Council and what power they have, because it's unique for the state to have somebody that has to approve of what the governor signs off on.
Sure. Really, New Hampshire is one of the only states with an executive council. I guess Massachusetts has one, but it's not doesn't do as many functions as the New Hampshire executive councils. So it takes 3 votes on the executive council to spend any money in New Hampshire. We have a block vote, which is a vote to keep the lights on and pay the employees and such as that every month. And so we're the body that takes the money out of the pot, and you and the legislative body are the ones that put the money in the pot. So that's the one of the functions of the Executive Council. We really basically approve every dollar that's being spent at the state level.
And you have to go through all the paperwork on this to make sure the contracts are reasonable, and do you have any responsibility to see if the contracts are completed appropriately?
Yeah, we do. And I'll give you a couple examples. A simple roofing project at the state nursery in Boscawen. I was looking through the bids, checking the prices, and seeing that this bid for a new metal roof on the tractor barn at the state nursery seemed way out of line. So in this particular case, I took a ride over to the nursery to see if there was any reason that could be, and actually uncovered some interesting facts. In that bid for the metal roofing, that should be around $4 to $6 a square foot, was up at $13 to $14 a square foot. So I asked for more information on the contract, and I'm looking through the contract, and they say, oh, there's rot in the roof. So I took a ride over to Boscawen to see if there was rot in the roof, and why. Is there anything special about this project I don't understand? Yeah. And when I got there, I looked over the whole roof, and there wasn't one rotten board in that roof. Then I realized we got a bogus bid. The bid is not matching the conditions we had. Asked the Department of Resources to put it out to bid again, and then we got a bid back in line with market prices. So sometimes we really dig into bids.
I see. Yeah, that's unique. It's
sure.
So were there multiple bids on this, or what?
There was like 3 bids, but they were all too high. And it had been bid 2 or 3 times before, so there was something wrong in the process as well. Why aren't we getting out to more local contractors? This was a relatively small job that should have been able to be done. So there's something wrong with the way we're advertising the bids as well. Another example would be we buy tractors to mow the edge of the highway, some with turnpike funds, some with highway funds. And the legislature had offered as a possibility to lease purchase these tractors. But by the time this item came to the council, it didn't make any sense to lease purchase these tractors. We had 2 months left in fiscal year 15, and fiscal year 16 would be here before the grass needs to be mowed. So there was 2 years' money available within 2 or 3 weeks. And it just made no sense to go into a 3-year lease purchase. So we saved $100,000 by buying these mowing tractors
Wow.
outright instead of lease purchasing them.
Very good.
So that's the type of detail we get into from time to time.
So you're pretty busy with all the stuff the state has to purchase and use.
We have over 100 contracts to review on average every meeting. Some of them are easy, and some of them require more time.
A little bit of work on the side, like you did at this.
A little more work on the side, I guess. And recently, we've been working on a contract with Good News Garage, which is a nonprofit agency that supplies free cars to welfare recipients. And we are in the process of digging deep into that. We found out that they're titling cars without a car dealer's license, and getting that straightened out, and they have been for several years. So shame on the Department of Safety for allowing that, letting them title vehicles without a dealer's license, and shame on them. They know they needed a license in Vermont. They have one in Vermont.
And they just didn't
but not
bother
here.
with it here.
So we're still digging into the details of this, because it's costing us, according to their figures, around $7,500 to give away a $5,000 car. And the car is donated, and the labor is done at cost or at very low rates. So there's this huge overhead and administration cost here, and we need to find a way to do this better too.
That's interesting. You find out these little things that probably would slip by if you didn't have an executive council to look at. It's something that the department, the administration, should be a little bit more aware of. I don't know if you're getting any feedback from them. How come you haven't done this on your own? You know, why do you wait for us to find out?
And it is a little disappointing, you know, especially with the Department of Resources. It wouldn't take the rocket scientists to look up at the roof and see that there's no rot.
Right.
It shouldn't take the Department of Health and Human Services outside help to see that it's costing us more than the car is worth to give away the car.
Right.
You know, maybe we should be just buying them and giving them away.
You go to wholesale.
Yeah, you know, maybe we should be going to the wholesale car auction.
Right.
So, yeah, we're a little disappointed, but these things slip through the cracks. Sometimes I think because government is so big that details get missed.
Well, that's an interesting topic we could talk about, because I kind of believe the government is too big. And I think we ought to trim it a little bit and have more things done on the private line. I don't know if that's any of your opinion, or do you feel that how can we better the situation of getting a more responsive administration?
Well, I think that government shouldn't do things for people that people can do for themselves.
Right.
The government can help people up, but we're not there to hold their hand for the rest of their life. I think we need to always remember that in order to spend a dollar at the state or federal level, that we have to take it from somebody first.
Right.
It really gets under my skin when people say, oh, it's federal money, just spend it.
Right.
And we really need to remember that as elected officials in New Hampshire, that's New Hampshire taxpayer money, whether it comes from Washington or whether it comes from the people or businesses in the state, that we need to spend that money like it's our own. And I think in the upcoming election here, you're going to find out that that's a big difference between Dave Wheeler and my opponent. Is I try to treat the taxpayers' money like it was my own and spend it frugally.
Yeah, because a number of things do come through that way. It's federal money. It doesn't cost us anything. Well, it does. It comes from your other pocket, not the state pocket. And we have to make sure that it's being used appropriately.
So, and I think since we're in Nashua, we probably should talk about the train a little bit, and because I think this principle applies. If we're going to build the train that people are talking about building to Manchester and Concord, that's going to cost $500 million with interest. We're not paying down the federal debt.
Right.
So the interest we borrow to build this train is going on ad infinitum. And some people benefit, and a lot of people who have to pay don't benefit. would run a $10 million a year deficit,
Operating costs.
operating deficit, and we got to get that money from somewhere.
Right.
We cannot use the gas tax. I think it's important to
Right.
explain because the New Hampshire Constitution prohibits that.
Mm-hmm.
Gas tax can only be spent on roads and very directly related services like the state police policing the road. So we have a mode of transportation to get to Boston and places we have to go through the Boston Express bus service. And that service runs operationally virtually in the black. It's probably one of the best run bus services in the country fiscally. And if we were to add a train all the way to Manchester and Concord, we would devastate the bus service. We'd have a bus service that runs in the red, and we have a train, the train that runs in the red. So maybe we should try baby steps.
Yeah.
Maybe we could bring the train to the Nashua, Massachusetts line and see if the ridership projections are correct, and if that works without spending $500 million,
Right.
we could have a smaller investment and see how that works for our commuters who go south.
That's the kind of thing that I've been pushing too. I mean, if we want to try it to the Massachusetts line. If you're going to get anything, I do think that we do have to improve transportation in the southern part of New Hampshire, east-west wise. I
Sure.
don't think, but once we get 101 done, that expansion that's going to go on, maybe that will help. I don't know. But you're right. I mean, why do we have to do it all the way to Concord? Why can't we just start it here? And one of the things that I think, I've talked to the mayor about this, I don't think we've done any kind of cooperative arrangement with the communities that are between Nashua and Manchester to show them that they could benefit. And how could they benefit? I mean, I think from what I've heard from other people in those communities, they don't see any benefit, just an increase in taxes.
Yeah. We need to do that outreach, and
Right.
I'm sure that as population grows, that it'll make more sense.
Mm-hmm.
It'll become more financially viable. But if the issue is getting to Boston, we have that now.
Yeah.
We have the buses. They run well. It works well. People rave about the bus service.
Oh, I've used it, yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
They rave about the bus service to Boston.
Especially if you have to get to the airport
To the
with
air,
luggage.
Yeah, with the airport to luggage is much better than than trying to do the train and then get a shuttle over there. If you're going to South Station, you don't have, you can go right directly to South Station.
Yeah, right.
My son used it when he come home from college. It was great,
Yeah.
And it pays for itself. It's not an extra burden on the taxpayer.
And it's very comfortable, too. You get Wi-Fi and everything on there. Let's go over to the railroad on the East Coast. And they always talk about that. That's a success. But my understanding is we subsidize it more than it was originally intended to.
Yeah, the Downeaster runs through a small section of New Hampshire. Maine basically picks up the subsidies, and they use something called CMAQ funds,
Right.
congestion mitigation funds, to pay for the operational subsidies, federal funds, of the train. In New Hampshire, we used CMAQ funds mostly to fix roads and bridges and some congestion, intersection problems and things like that. If we were to go with the train, we would use virtually all of our CMAQ dollars to subsidize the train and have
Nothing for
not
the
have
roads.
that pot of money to fix up the roads and intersections and congestion
Sure.
spots that need to be fixed up. So there's always a balancing act when you got to come up with the money.
There always is, yeah.
You have
But,
to set priorities.
Yeah, and so what you're saying is that right now the buses are really taking care of the problem. If people would even want to use them, though, I mean, I don't know why more people don't use them.
It's priced right to go to Boston. It's as cheap as parking your car once you get there.
That's right.
It's great. And then, the people, supporters of the train will say, well, if we do this train, it'll bring X number of jobs and economic development. But what if you put that same money into bringing companies to New Hampshire rather than bringing
That's right.
New Hampshire people to Massachusetts?
Right.
You can't just look at spending those dollars in a vacuum of train only when you're looking at economic development.
Yeah. Do you get into an economic development in any way? I mean, do they come to you to see what would pass the executive council?
There are certain pots of money. There's community development block grants. One on the agenda this week is a $500,000 grant to build public housing, and some things like that. And then there's Business Finance Authority grants, which help businesses get started. And it's been my policy that if the Business Finance Authority is loaning money at a good interest rate and puts together a financial package that makes sense, that I support those items. But if the economic development includes a taxpayer guarantee for the loan to the business, I do not support those. I don't think the Constitution allows me to tax individuals to pay for someone else to start a business. And I just don't think that should be the function of government. So we are involved to that extent of these grants and Business Finance Authority loans that need council authorization.
So they have to have good financial backing on that.
Yep.
You might provide some kind of guarantee or not? I was thinking of this operation that's up in the North Country.
The Balsams?
Balsams.
Yeah. You know, I think other people are getting skeptical of the whole deal too. I was watching Chronicle this week, and there are people that are getting skeptical of whether this is going to work, whether there's enough local people to fill the jobs that would be required, whether people will travel that far. But that is a situation that would be a multi-million dollar New Hampshire taxpayer loan guarantee, and I won't support that.
Well, is that for the whole state, or is that just I thought I heard something about a local entity that is doing the guarantee, the county maybe?
They've created an enterprise zone,
Right.
So that they can go through the financing and get a taxpayer guaranteed loan. But I just don't think that's appropriate to ask the taxpayers to do that. If the business proposition was so good and guaranteed to work, they wouldn't need the taxpayers to guarantee it. They'd go strictly to the bank and to the market to get their financing. So just by virtue of wanting the New Hampshire taxpayer to guarantee it, it's a little bit of a risky deal.
Yeah, I see. I thought, does it have just to do with the infrastructure guarantee? I mean, what they're going to do to improve the roads and other things to get to the Balsams?
Well, yeah, and that's part of the package deal, and to fix up the roads to get there. You know, I support that part, but not the taxpayer guarantee on the loan to fix up the buildings and such as that.
Okay. So, are there any others like that? Or is that, I know that's a big one. I just don't know whether it sounds good. I don't know if you're going to get people to get there, because it is a little out of the way.
Well, here's another example of a helping business without a taxpayer loan. We recently allowed Mount Sunapee and their operators, Okemo, to expand the mountain and build some new ski trails. I think the Department of Economic Development put together a great package. The state will end up with 360 some odd acres more to Mount Sunapee State Park. If we allow them to put trails on part of those, we preserve the existing hiking trails and bird watching trails and the nature walking, and have the skiing. I remember it was 23 years ago, I was on the committee that recommended that we privatize Sunapee Mountain and not run it through the state anymore. Right. We were losing money hand over fist, both at Mount Sunapee and Cannon Mountain. And this committee recommended that we privatize the mountain, which we did. And now Okemo is actually supporting the operations of Cannon Mountain was several $1 million over the last 23 years
really?
from the lease payments that they're making to the state to use Mount Sunapee, and they've made it into an awesome,
Very nice.
very nice
One
ski
of my
area.
favorite places, yeah.
So there's an economic development deal that makes sense without putting the taxpayer on the hook. We bring out those extra jobs to the state, and the taxpayer's not on the hook for them.
Good. You have a very interesting, broad perspective of what's going on in the business here. I mean, in the state. Is there anything that you think the state should be doing that they're not doing?
I think there's some things that we could do better. For instance, over in Milford, we're widening the road, not communicating with the landowners on either side very well. I have one, and this is kind of the constituent part of this council job. I get a call and he said, I can't get to my property anymore. They're putting up 1,500 feet of guardrail. So, and I put my snow over there in the winter. I don't really use it, but I need a place to put my snow on those big heavy snow years, and now I can't get my bucket loader over there because they put up a guardrail. So those type of situations, we're working with the state and the landowners to see if we can come to a resolution and get better communication going on these projects from the start.
It's funny that people don't think of that. If they were doing something, you know, in their own neighborhood, they probably would think about knocking on doors and telling people what's happening.
Yeah.
But if it's the state's doing it, they don't have the same kind of attitude.
Yeah.
I mean, we're supposed to work together here in the state, and most parts, I think, do. But every once in a while, there's a wall between the bureaucrats and the people, the voters.
I got a call a couple weeks ago from two entrepreneurs who want to raise red claw catfish in tanks.
Oh, really?
It's an Australian, crayfish.
Crayfish.
It's an Australian crayfish, big claws like a mini lobster. They want to raise them here in the South. The market for those is picking up as a substitute or in addition to lobster and crab and such as that. And they want to do it here in New Hampshire. But Fish and Game has a rule that says you can't have any indigenous species, not indigenous. So these are going to be raised in tanks. They can't take the New England cold. If they were to get out into the wild, they would die. So there's no threat of, spreading disease into the native population. It's just a barrier in state government that's keeping these two entrepreneurs from raising their catfish and having, a New Hampshire farm-to-table market. So we're working with Fish and Game to try to get the rules changed and make an exception for this crayfish.
Right.
So that these guys
The
can
proper
have a little
safety things in
business.
Yeah.
And people seem to love this product in the South, and I think it would fly here. So quite a bit of constituent work sometimes, just getting through those little barriers you don't think are there.
With your experience and everything, I'm sure you've run into a lot of instances where you've been talking to people and helping them over some of these bureaucratic barriers, I guess.
We had another one with the Department of Health and Human Services, and you may remember this because it took legislation to ultimately fix it, that now farmers can sell up to 20 gallons worth of raw milk on their farm every day, or cheese products that would equal 20 gallons of milk, and the people want it. The market is there. They want to protect themselves. So as long as the product is labeled, so we know where it comes from, were there to be a problem, and through the help of you guys in the legislature and myself working with Health and Human Services and the Department of Agriculture, we loosened up those rules so people can sell their products, and the consumer and New Hampshire residents get awesome natural food right from the cow.
That's right, yeah. I've seen more of that around, so that must be really taking off because you see more different kinds of cheeses and other foods from the farmers. I guess, the farmers have to work year-round to survive.
Yes.
And, you got to have something in there that they can sell during the winter and stuff like that.
And farmers need different products.
That's right.
They're not all, selling just milk.
Yeah.
They're making corn mazes and having agritourism. They're growing pumpkins and having people come in and pick their own. It's not just the one crop thing anymore. They
No.
need the multiple crops to survive.
And something to work with the people, or sleigh rides and whatever, you
Yeah.
know, to do that.
Sure, sure.
Well, Dave, you're been campaigning already. Do you need any more help? Somebody that wants to help you,
Yep,
get
sure.
elected, who do they contact?
Yep, you can go to davewheeler.org
Uh-huh.
on the website and just drop me a note, leave your contact information, and I'll get back to you. We always need help on campaigns and yard sign locations
Oh,
and
yeah.
donations.
Literature drops and stuff
Literature
like that.
drops. On September 17th, out at my farm,
Yeah.
we're going to have a skeet shoot
Oh, really?
and a steak dinner
Okay.
that we're putting on for $100, and we're going to have a great day to raise
sounds
money for the
interesting.
campaign.
That's
A little different
interesting.
than your typical wine and
That's
cheese.
right. Yeah. That
We're going to have a lot of fun. Good food.
Okay, September 17th. We'll have
Yep.
to remember that. And
Yep.
people want to contact your website, they can find out how to
Yep.
get a ticket. I guess.
Absolutely, yep.
And do you have a phone number that they could call? Is that on the website too?
We have two phone numbers.
Okay.
The phone number at the house for my home office is 672-6062, or they can call on my cell phone at 765-2893.
Okay, very
Yep.
good. We'll make sure that gets onto the tape here
All
so
right.
that people can pick it up at the end of the show.
Yeah.
But Dave, I really appreciate that. We've come to the end of the time, though.
It goes by fast.
It does, it does. Well, thank you very much for the information, and good luck in your campaign.
Well, thank you,
And
Carl.
thank you for listening in. Remember that the Nashua Republican Club has a website, NashuaGOP.org, and you can find out about activities of the Republican Party in Nashua. There'll be something in the end of August and at the end of September, October 1st, I should say, that you might be interested in participating in. Thank you very much for listening. And thank you, Dave. For
Thank
your
you, Carl.
time.
Appreciate you having me on.
Okay.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.